The way Namor dies in Wakanda Forever keeps the villains in the MCU from having a problem that keeps coming up. If there's one thing we know about the MCU, it's that the villain almost never makes it to the end credits. In this video, we'll discuss how Namor avoids one of the MCU's biggest villain problems, and some Wakanda Forever moments that upset us the most. First up, Namor lived till the end credits. After King T'Challa's death, the world's governments and the underwater kingdom of Talokan threatened Wakanda in the Black Panther sequel. But unlike many villains who came before him, Namor lives until the end credits. He even makes a fragile peace with Wakanda, which makes him a possible ally instead of an enemy in future movies. In the MCU, villains rarely make it to the end credits of the movies they're in, which can be a problem. Gore the God Butcher, played by Christian Bale, was a new villain in the MCU who was scary and exciting. His character arc could only go in one direction. Kang, Loki, and Thanos have all been in more than one Avengers movie because they were the main bad guys in their respective phases. Other villains usually only show up once, making it hard for the characters to leave a lasting impression after the movie. Namor doesn't have this problem in Wakanda Forever because he's one of the most interesting bad guys in the MCU so far. Up next, why Namor's a great villain. Due to Chadwick Boseman's untimely death, Wakanda Forever's origin story for the new Black Panther Shuri. She's still sad about her brother's death when Namor attacks Wakanda and kills her mother, Queen Ramonda. During her fight with Namor, Shuri has to deal with her sadness and anger, but she's been to the underwater country of Talokan and knows how similar it is to hers. Namor's also upset with the colonizers who turned his people into enslaved people, with America for trying to steal their natural resources, and with Wakanda for helping this happen. Namor and Shuri both feel anger and grief, which makes him the perfect bad guy for her story as Wakanda's new Black Panther. But where other MCU movies left off with the Dark Mirror version at the end of the hero's origin story, Namor and Shuri saw how similar they were and decided to work together. Namor's a great villain because he's complicated and his evil actions can be explained. Will we see him again in the MCU? It needs to be clarified when Tenoch Huerta will come back as Namor, but the ending of Wakanda Forever strongly suggests that the MCU hasn't seen the last of him. Namor could come back in several upcoming MCU movies because he's a mutant. Talokan has a lot of vibranium, and their relationship with Wakanda is rocky. The most obvious choice would be Black Panther 3, which would continue to build on the peace between Wakanda and Talokan, maybe in response to a new threat to both countries. Shuri and Wakanda are keeping Talokan a secret, but it needs to be clarified how much Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine heard when she bugged Everett Ross. She probably heard some of what he said about Namor's Talakanils with blue skin. Valentina was willing to get involved in the politics of Wakanda as the head of the CIA to make the country unstable and get vibranium. If she had another way to get the precious metal, she might send her Thunderbolts team to Talokan. This would bring back Namor, the bad guy in Wakanda Forever, but this time as the hero, fighting the Thunderbolts' anti-heroes. Moving on, understanding his character from the comics. Namor has a short temper and would do anything to protect his kingdom, much like Shuri. He's half human and half Atlantean royalty. He also fought with Captain America against the threat the Nazis posed to the world during World War II. But he isn't a good person by nature like Cap is. Because of his temper and pride, he's more of an anti-hero who doesn't mind destroying anything that gets in his way. Namor has been a part of the Marvel Universe for over 80 years. In that time, he changed his mind about humans but kept the same arrogance. Now let's look at some Wakanda Forever moments that upset us the most. Let's start with how they didn't recast T'Challa. When Chadwick Boseman died, we were all heartbroken. It also made it impossible for Ryan Coogler and Kevin Feige to change T'Challa's role in the sequel, but the team felt it was too soon to recast, and everyone was still sad over losing Boseman. When asked about the decision, they emphasized that Chadwick's role had been pretty unique, and not anyone could play it. Even though the role would have to be recast, many fans still were disappointed and outraged by the idea of a movie without the character. One Twitter user pointed out that he was the only male black superhero, and replacing him just killed the essence of his role in the MCU. This isn't the first time the MCU's changed actors though. Don Cheadle replaced Terrence Howard as War Machine, and Harrison Ford replaced the late William Hurt as General Thunderbolt Ross in the following Thunderbolts, not to mention killing off T'Challa in such an anticlimactic way. Boseman's death forced the sequel's story to be told in a very different way. This meant that someone else would have to take over. That's when T'Challa's super smart scientist sister Shuri stepped in. For that plot to work, the movie had to explain why the character wasn't there. Since they couldn't kill him on screen and didn't want to to use any CG, they decided to have him die off-screen. To be fair, there was no good way to do that, especially without Boseman or a stand-in. So the director made the best choice he could by having the death happen quickly at the beginning of the movie. At the same time, T'Challa dying of a disease is a metatextual reference to Boseman's real-life death. But this made many people angry, like one Twitter user, who pointed out that Wakanda's super science seems good enough to cure almost any fatal illness. Even in the comics, the character can't get sick. It could be more exciting to have your main character die off-screen. Let's learn more about how Namor was an Atlantean in the movie. Namor's backstory changed a lot in the movie. Instead of being from Atlantis, Namor's from Talokan, a Mesoamerican-inspired fallen kingdom loosely based on Aztec mythology. The source material was changed for several reasons, one of which may have been to avoid comparisons to DC's hit Aquaman movies starring Jason Momoa. Also, it's a great way to make the MCU and superhero movies in general more diverse and inclusive. Even though most fans like how the MCU changed Namor's backstory, some weren't as happy about the change in canon. Let's be honest, people who care about every detail of comic book history are impossible to please. Coming up, Namor giving in. Most of us like the change to Namor's backstory because it made it possible for more indigenous people to be shown in a big-budget superhero movie. But some people had other problems with how the character was portrayed in the sequel. For example, in the original Marvel's comics, Namor's known for being stubborn, strong-willed, and a bit of a ladies' man. Even though much of that's still there in the movie version, some people were upset that he was defeated so easily in the end. Some even think Shuri shouldn't have been given the Black Panther mantle. Also, he doesn't seem as suspicious as he does in the book, even though he and Shuri seem to have some chemistry as he showed her around Talokan. That's probably a good thing. Next, the CGI wasn't great. It's not just this movie that has this problem though. Many recent blockbusters have had a lot of bad visual effects work. This industry-wide problem has worsened because the number of VFX shots in blockbuster movies and TV shows is growing exponentially. Also, the effects industry doesn't have unions, which leads to burnout and the loss of talent. No matter what, this practice is especially a problem in the MCU. Still, none of this changes the fact that much of the CGI in Wakanda Forever feels unfinished. Some people even compared Riri Williams' shiny Ironheart armor to the Power Rangers. Even though Ironheart's a welcome addition to the cast, it's hard to disagree with this point. Finally, the serious tone. Many fans were glad that Wakanda Forever had a much more serious tone. This makes sense since the whole movie is about heavy things like grief, the terrible effects of imperialism, and the death of the film's previous star. Some people didn't like the change in tone, or at least didn't like how dark and oppressive it got. They thought it got too serious or different from the first movie. If you look at how bad things were behind the scenes, there was probably no way that the movie would be as fun as the first Black Panther. But it's also understandable that some people came to see a fun fantasy rather than a profound meditation on grief and loss. It's all about preference. And on that note, that's a wrap for this video. What do you think of Namor being a complicated villain? Do you think that they should have stuck to the source material? Are the movie's issues that upsetting? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.